Hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. This is my first ever YouTube video and I've been so excited to get this project shared with you. Today we're going to be working on the project that I have behind me. This is the finished project. This piece spent a lot of time on the road. It belongs to a military family, so it spent a lot of time in the back of a truck. There's a lot of scratches, dings, it was even missing a top corner. So I'm going to show you today how I repaired all of the issues that it had, all the minor imperfections, and gave it a fresh new coat of paint to fit into their space. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is start by removing all of the old hardware. I'm actually going to be reusing this hardware later on. So I'm just going to pop these off and then I'm going to put them in a little bowl set aside and I will reuse them later. The next thing I'm going to do is the most important part of any sort of furniture flip. It's making sure your piece is nice and clean, free of any sort of filth and grime, or else your paint is not going to adhere to your furniture. I use a Dawn dish soap and hot water mixture just to go ahead and get everything off. It's also not a chemical, so it's going to be a little bit more gentle on my hands, so I'm not so scared to use it. And then after I wipe this whole piece down with my Dawn dish soap and hot water mixture, I come back in with just plain hot water, and that's going to help make sure that all of that soap scum is not left adhering to the surface. Next, I decided to try and fill in some areas where the veneer was chipping. So I literally just started drawing this on with the wood filler and then smoothing it back out with my plastic spatula. This did not work out in the end, but I wanted to include this part of the video because it's all about the process. After I was finished painting the wood filler on the top, this is what it looked like. Also missing this corner right over here, so we're going to start repairing that. Okay, and now to get started on repairing that corner. So I'm going to be using a mold putty kit. It comes in two parts, part A and part B. And the directions say just take about 1-to-1 ratio of each and start mixing it together. It's about the consistency of Play-Doh. So I'm gonna start kneading this together, mixing it thoroughly until I get one solid shade. Now that the putty is mixed, I'm going to place this on the opposite corner of the one that I'm trying to repair. This is going to give me a good mold. That way I have something to replicate a new corner out of. After about 20 minutes, I was able to pop that silicone putty mold off of that one corner. And now we're going to be mixing Bondo and the cream hardener. This is going to be on the inside of the mold, which is going to give us our new corner. The stuff is stinky and not good on your hands. So make sure you wear latex gloves and you use it in a well-ventilated area. I'm also wearing a ventilation mask as I work with this because it was very, very, very strong. I would also suggest using some protective eyewear because you don't want this splattering in your face. Now, this is a little tedious. You've got to make sure that the cream hardener, which is the red cream that I just spread on, You have to make sure that is very, very well blended. If it's not, then your product is not going to set up properly. So mix, mix, mix. You've got about 2 to 5 minutes before this starts setting up. So mix it well and mix it fast. After everything is mixed, I'm going to take my putty mold and I'm going to put a lot of Bondo right here in the center of my mold. That way, when I place it on the corner, it kind of smooths out and everything is filled because you do not want any gaps. Gaps mean you have to go back and fix it. We'd rather do it right the first time. Now I can just press this mold right over the corner that I'm going to fix. I'm just trying to make sure that all of my areas are covered well, make sure it's in place. And the good thing about this, to keep it from sliding, because the Bondo hardens so quickly, it's a good idea just to hold it here for a second since my piece is standing upright and not laying down. So I got a paper towel just to kind of clean up any excess. The more excess I can clean off now, the less I have to do later. So I'm cleaning up any excess that I see around the edges of the mold. I'm going to hold this in place for a couple seconds and then we'll revisit it here in about an hour. After my Bondo was set up, I was able to come back and gently peel back my putty mold. You want to be really gentle when you remove this putty mold from the Bondo, because if there's any air bubbles in the Bondo or any repairs you need to make, you don't want to have to risk coming back and having to make a new putty mold. This is a little bit of excess, okay, a lot of excess that I didn't get to, but we'll work with it. Okay, so this is neither the safest nor the best way to go about doing this. I would recommend using a file to do this, but unfortunately I didn't have one. So I'm using an old steak knife that I stole from my kitchen to just kind of shave away any of this bulk excess Bondo that's hardened to the top. This is why you want to get rid of your excess while it is still wet, because you'll end up with a mess like this. So I'm just going to kind of shave this away and then I will come back in with my sander and I will smooth it all out later. Now that I have all of the bulk removed, I am using my 5-inch DeWalt random orbit sander with a 120 grit sandpaper to come in and just kind of buff this out, smooth everything out, and make sure that my edges are nice and crisp like the corner of a dresser is supposed to be. Okay, now here is where things get a little sticky, quite literally. This piece of veneer was starting to pull up and I really didn't want to just tear it off completely. I felt like it could be repaired. So I decided to use a little bit of Gorilla Glue, press that down inside, and then I tried using these small clamps to secure it, but the small clamps were not holding it. They just weren't doing the job. So I quickly ran over to my stash of clamps, found a larger size, and was hoping that that would also work. But alas, it also was not securing. So I took a paper towel and started wiping up any sort of excess. Again, clean up the excess now while it's wet so you don't have to do it later. Cleaned up the excess and decided that, you know what? I think I'm just gonna have to hold this in place. And if my fingers stick to it, we'll figure it out. Thankfully, I was able to walk away after a few seconds and move on to the next step of this project. With 120 grit sandpaper on my DeWalt random orbit sander on level 1, I am going to strip down this top Remember earlier when I said my wood filler trick did not work? This is what I meant. So I'm actually going to sand this entire top down, and then I'm going to give the rest of the body a light scuff sand, also with the 120 grit sandpaper. Giving your piece a good scuff sand ensures that the paint will adhere to the surface properly and is not going to rub off over time. And because my sander does not fit into these little crevices, of course, I did go through and hand sand these areas. I'm still using a 120 grit sandpaper to do this, but I wanted to do this by hand to make sure that my sander did not mess up any of this detail, and I wanted to make sure that everything stayed intact. And now I'm just using an old towel to wipe back any dust and debris that was kicked up while sanding. Typically I use a lint-free rag or a microfiber towel, but today I'm just using this old rag. And now for the fun part, the painting. I am using Fusion Mineral Paint in Homestead Blue. This is a beautiful blue teal color with a little bit of green in there. And for my first coat, I am going to be applying it onto my surface using a 4-inch foam roller. When I have flat surfaces like this, I like to roll it on first because it gives me a nice even coat. It's also a little bit faster. I'm not really concerned about making sure everything is perfect right now. I'm just concerned about getting that first coat on. So let's get to rolling. And then before I start rolling, I'm actually going to cut in. This is the angled brush from Zebra. I absolutely love Zebra brushes, and I'm not sure I will ever use anything else to paint. These brushes are so smooth and give a beautiful finish. I'm obsessed with them. They're also really easy to clean, and they're just so much fun to use. I didn't show this part earlier, but there's actually 3 drawers inside this piece, and we're going to be covering those today, also in Fusion Mineral Paint, but in the shade Raw Silk. I'll also be painting the inside with my round Zebra brush using the same color, Raw Silk by Fusion Mineral Paint. to the second coat. Whenever I'm working with a piece that doesn't have a natural wood grain exposed, I work from the shortest distance. So instead of working from top to bottom on this piece, I'm going to be working from side to side. It's going to make sure that my brush strokes are even and natural looking. And then I'm also very, very careful here at the ends, right there on the edges and the corners of this piece, to make sure I don't have any paint glob up and create runs for myself. The owner of this piece really likes the worn patina that's on this hardware, so rather than painting or replacing the hardware altogether, I'm just going to clean it up. So I'm going to be using salt, vinegar, and boiling water. I'm just going to pour the water directly over this hardware and then let it sit for about 20 minutes. After that, I'll come back and give it a good scrub. Now that the water's cooled down, I've come back with a little steel brush and I'm just scrubbing all of the grime off and then buffing it out with this little rag. And then I'm going to continue that with the other 3 pieces. And now that the paint is dry and the hardware is cooled, I'm going to be popping this back on and wrapping up the final touches for this piece. And that's it, you guys. I hope you enjoyed watching as much as I enjoyed making this video for you. Be sure to like and subscribe for more videos in the future. Until next time.